Thank you so much for joining us. We are back today again with Real Estate for Real People, and we have an exciting guest today. So Dustin Serviss from Serviss Wealth Management is joining us today. Dustin and I, we've known each other for, oh my gosh, I think it's probably
20 years. We're
20
getting
years.
older.
20
Wow.
years.
Aren't you guys only 20?
Yeah, we're five. We're five, okay? But we've known each other a long time. We both went to university or college here, took our business degrees. And then, I went real estate and you went into the financial and insurance world. So maybe to start, you can kind of tell us a little bit about yourself.
Before someone reads the fine print, so I actually took engineering and the business.
Oh, that's
and the
right.
Engineering
That's right.
were
I'd
same. The
forgotten.
classrooms were together, so we were always in the same
really?
groups. Yeah, so it was.
That's right.
It wasn't instantly financial, and it was civil engineering. Moved to Calgary, did that for a couple of years, and then after sort of helping people with the RSP plan at the office, and at that time I didn't know, but in 2004, 5, 6, the market was going up. And so everyone was like, oh, wow, thanks for helping us pick those investments. My kids' RESP is doing great. I thought, I like working with people and I want to be in the finance space. I've always been curious about money and we both have paper routes. So
Yep. Started at a young age.
yeah, the collection fanny pack with the clipping of the
Yep.
thing, that's what it all started. So money and then led to this business. And just like you guys, we get to work with great people and solve problems, which really is never a dull moment.
And you do lots of different avenues with your business. Like you do the financial wealth management, you do kind of the overall, you kind of give guidance sometimes with business as well and what they should be doing. And then of course the insurance component. So is it that your clients, do you take them on and kind of give them an overall sort of life plan?
I guess you could describe it as that. It is a journey. We tell people we're not going to solve all your problems in this first meeting or the first 3 months. It's going to be over the next years that we really develop it. And I think, specific to your guys' maybe the audience is real estate is people have a goal. Maybe that goal is to expand their real estate portfolio on an investment property or a bigger house or get a pool in the house that they're in. And maybe they shouldn't do that because they've got old beliefs and gristle that says they can't do that. When,
Right.
when you put a plan together and they see it unfold, they go, wow, actually, that isn't as big of a risk. I've got all this old baggage that says it's a risk because I've never really had it laid out. So yes, we work mostly with business owners and usually they understand their business very well and then their personal finances not so well. But if you can make the approach the same as they approach their business, the gears fall into place quite easily for people to recognize what's happening.
And I think one of your big mottos, and I'm not going to give this justice, it's the perfect wording, but is really about living your best life now, not waiting for retirement, but enjoying now, sort of, right?
Yep. So in I do webinars, and in the names have been changed, but 2 clients that I've had, I call Harv and Maria. So Harv is a hard charging business owner. He builds his business up and he reinvests back in the business, sacrifices evenings and weekends, and he's putting all the money back into the business for the goal to, at age 60, sell for a bigger number, have more money than average person, and have more happiness than average person. Whereas Maria, on the other hand, was more intentional about where she spent her money, made sure her spending was in line with her values and her goals, really checked in, valued time off. And, she built her business up, but not as big. So at age 60, instead of selling her business for $3 million, she only sold it for $1.5 million. The punchline of the story is they both die at age 63 with money in the bank. So it doesn't matter if you were Harv or you were Maria, you left money you still had money.
Right.
So the question is if you could kind of forecast that and see that, well, maybe I could take a Friday off. Maybe I could do whatever. And I won't have a $3 million business. I'll have a $2.2 million business. But you're living, you're getting, so Maria, in the analogy I say, she died with less money, but a diverse portfolio of memories.
Yes, I love that.
That's good.
It is good.
Yeah.
It just sort of brings it back to, helping people live more of their life now, yet be responsible for their future. And with you, what do you guys see with real estate? With, is it it's a big decision for people. Should I buy a rental house? How do
It's
you,
a huge
how do you
decision.
guys? I'm turning the questions back at you guys.
You're putting us in the hot seat?
Yeah, I want to.
Wait a second.
It only took me 6 minutes.
How can you tell Dustin has a podcast?
Shh, we weren't going to tell anyone. No, I'm kidding. That's true. Dustin does have a podcast. Your podcast is called, let's do a shout out right now.
The Picture of Wealth.
The Picture of Wealth. There we go. So to answer your question, Tamara, I'll let you go ahead.
No. You go. You're on a roll here.
So what do we say to people? I always say to people, my biggest advice is at least just get into the market. You might not be picking the best perfect house. You want a white picket fence. We get lots of people that come and say, I want to buy something, and my goal is I want to have the perfect house with the 3 bedrooms up, the white picket fence, and I can't find that in my budget, so I'm just out of the market. And it's like, well, no. And
You
and
just
I've
said a Kettle Valley.
Yeah, maybe. But you and I've talked lots about this, is just start small, but start.
Yeah.
So whether that's buying a small little rental house or a condo or something, but at least getting into the market. And I think overall knowing your costs and having a plan and, being smart about it, really. So we say the same thing as you, is have that plan and lay it out a bit.
And do you go like big? I'll send the question back, but I'm curious because I'm having this time with you guys. I want to utilize it too. So would you say buy a condo and then one condo and then rent it? Or would you try and wait and buy something bigger and rent it and maybe find a partner? Like how are the numbers?
Partnerships are tough. So I would, we've had over the years, and we've seen some successful partnerships, but the majority of them, the failure rate of marriages where partners love each other is 50%.
Right.
And so I think, my advice, you're not ever going to be able to time the market perfectly. Stock market, real estate market, there is no perfect time. And so my advice is just for people to get in when they're comfortable, when they find something that works and get on that property ladder and then upgrade, once you're in, once you've, purchased a studio apartment or what have you, but then you're in and can then, sell and move upwards that way.
And I always think too, as long as you have, the number I always say to people is 5 years. As long as you're okay with holding on to that property for at least 5 years, maybe more, you're going to do just fine. So if your plan is to hold that, you don't need to, same with the stock market. You're not going to look at your stocks every single, well, you probably do, but most people aren't going to look every single day because they're going to up and down and you would go crazy. Same with the real estate market. If you buy that investment, buy it, get a good tenant in there and forget about it until that 5-year plan. And then you can look at maybe, selling it if you want to. But by then, the way the Kelowna market is, when we look at the last 20 years, the property value will have gone up. So you will have built in some equity. If you're looking at buying something and turning around and flipping it in a year, don't do it because that market's gone and that's so unpredictable.
Yeah.
That's,
okay, well, thank you for that.
Yeah, so that's our advice. So if somebody's starting in, they come to you and say, okay, I've got a little bit of money saved. What do I do?
Well, that's a big question. So the curiosity is important, that they're looking for those answers. But I think we use an approach called a dashboard or an asset map, and that really is just a drawing of all of your stuff on one page. So we have the software to write 100-page financial plans, and you guys know people that write 100-page financial plans. But really, for the most part, what we've learned, and again, it's usually business owner, limited time, spouse is, I'm stereotyping, but usually not involved. So you have one spouse that's a primary income earner, one that's not, and so they don't really know. They know how much they can spend, and so having that dashboard, it's like, here's everything. For one, if one person passes away and the other one has no idea, bam, there's like a piece of paper that sits with the will. So that's a dashboard. So getting a picture. The next will be, I just mentioned it, but BAM. So bare ass minimum is an acronym we use, BAM, which is your bare ass minimum expenses. So for you to exist each day, what does it cost you? Never mind vacations or Louis Vuitton purses or any of that stuff. If you got disabled and couldn't work, those expenses are going to exist. That's the mortgage payment, that's the groceries, that's the heat on the house. So figure out your BAM. So you've got a dashboard. These are all my things. I've got my BAM figured out, which is my cash flow. And then in theory, you should have some left over. And I'm really simplifying just for audio, but that with the business and with your personal expenses, you should have some left over. So then what's left over is, figuring out where to put it.
Right.
And again, those silos are, this just shows some of my bias: real estate, stocks, high risk, no risk.
Right.
So you've got these just, those 4 silos. Okay, GICs or high interest savings account, real estate, commercial, residential, depending on, and the one piece that we really hone in on for people is their wealth edge. You've heard me talk about it. Your guys' wealth edge is real estate.
Yeah.
You're a realtor. You see the listing sheet right away, and you guys could choose to buy something for yourselves.
Right.
Whereas a carpenter's wealth edge is they should buy a reno house and fix it up.
Yes.
Because the risk is lower. and the probability is higher for them to make a good decision. You know, they
Right.
know when I walk into a house and it could be a rental house and I think, yeah, I'll flip this and make whatever. I have no idea how to move walls. I have no idea how to do plumbing.
Right.
I've got to hire that. And that just erodes the profit.
Right.
So, you know, wealth edge of, you know, a lawyer is probably their career.
Mhm.
It's like reinvesting in staff and more files. It's like they generate good money.
I love it. Wealth edge. I haven't ever heard of that.
No,
And
I
it
love
makes
that.
sense. It's good.
It does.
Yeah, so that's some people, you know, we call it a wealth edge. Some books have been written about it called human capital. So if you're a firefighter, your human capital is really, you're like a bond. Like you're low, you know, bonds are bad right now because of interest rates, but you're a safe. You've got a safe job.
Yes.
So that's low risk. So a firefighter or a teacher could invest a bit more aggressive because their job is so steady Eddie. You guys are all on commission and you have
Yeah.
staff, and there's no guarantee that you sell a house tomorrow.
Yeah.
Your, you know, human capital is high risk. So then maybe you would go lower risk on the investments. And then
Right.
you have this kind of this balanced approach that it isn't just, you know, you go to the bank, you fill out the questionnaire and it's like, oh, I'm moderate or middle risk.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
we used to joke, like nowadays it's like people go in, it's like, well, are you high risk, low risk, or medium? And people just get that like look like, well, I don't know.
No,
Like
it's
what's
so
the
true.
what's the context?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. And then how does insurance tie into all of that?
Well, there's two basic ways that we utilize insurance, which, you know, at the bottom of sort of someone's foundation is risk management. So when you look at laying out a plan, and you're like, I want to retire, I want to build a business, I want to buy a rental house. What are the risks? Well, the risks are most of the time you pass away, you get hurt, you get sick, get a will. You know, that's once you get those are like building blocks, and you're just, well, what if I died and I've got debt and I'm the only income earner? Ooh, that wouldn't leave my family very good. So I need some life insurance. So you
Yes.
could use life insurance in the form of term insurance, which is just simply you buy a policy, you pay an amount for a certain amount of years, the premium goes way up and you cancel it, and it served its purpose. So we usually
Right.
say, if you're going to go that route, buy a lot of it because it's cheap and you're probably not going to use it. So the money
Right.
is sort of gone, which it serves its purpose. But you can buy also cash value insurance, which usually is best for a business owner that has excess cash in their corporation, and even excess cash in a holding company would be best. And so you look at the silos I mentioned before of low risk, high risk, you know, core investment, you know, dividends or index funds or whatever it is, real estate. And then you can add this other kind of insurance, which would be whole life or participating whole life. And again, it has you know, you Google it. Some people love it. Some people hate it. There's all sorts of big debates about what's is best. But I look at it like there isn't like either or.
Exactly.
It's so I don't know. It's like you bolt it on to the rest of the things, and you've got an insurance need for your family. Great. You've got excess cash that you're putting into these buckets, and then it's just another. You know, we call it the conveyor. So at the end of the month, there's extra money, and then as it goes down the conveyor, it's just sort of knocking
Going in its
a little
bucket.
bits into each silo, and then the whole life insurance becomes another silo. And the purpose is, let's say you need insurance for 15 years because your kids are 5. And your mortgage is going to be about that long, let's say. So at the end of 10 years, depending on your contract, you could get the cash value to cross over what you've put in. So if you chose to cancel, yes, you haven't made money like investments or real estate, but you've got your insurance for free. And so that's,
Right.
Right.
we
Yeah,
could do
you
a whole
haven't lost
podcast
money.
on that kind of insurance and have some caller in debate. But I think there's good merit for exploring it, at least when you're looking at a complete financial plan.
Just minimizing your risk.
Well, yeah, that's people often come to our office and say, I need life insurance. And we'll say, okay, yeah, you've got some debt, but really 1 in 2,000 people die. 1 in 2 or 1 in 2.5 people get hurt or sick, like before the age of 65.
Right.
So often overlooked is a disability insurance critical illness discussion, at
Right.
least to say like, well, what is the plan?
Yeah.
And I just brainstorm with people and they say, well, my parents are significantly wealthy and they would probably help me out. Great. That's the plan. You
Yeah.
know, whether you
Yeah.
want to call that a responsible adult move,
Yeah.
Right.
you know, up for
But-
debate. But I think that's a lot of people just don't even have the discussion. Or like once a year, I discuss with Jody, my wife, it's like, what if? Usually around September, my disability insurance needs to be paid at that time. We go, okay, is our expenses or our BAM, like if I got hurt, is my disability insurance going to cover that?
Right.
And she's working full time now. So, now this year's discussion might be a little bit different. And we might say, well, maybe we could lower it.
Right.
On my specific disability policy, it's 50% refundable every 7 years. So some contracts in the insurance world, you can pay a bit more, but then get a refund on certain days.
Right.
Every 7 years, I get a check for half the premiums back if I don't claim, which then makes the net premium as low as it possibly can.
Yeah.
Right.
It
Critical
still
illness.
gives you some protection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then you again, it's not for everyone. It isn't, your budget can be a concern. And so you just have to put what you can afford in. It's like everyone would love to have a fourplex bought in 2009, probably.
Oh, I know.
Now,
Four of them.
Speaking on insurance, and I've gotten away from it and really shouldn't, but I know something that lenders want to see somebody get mortgage insurance. And to my understanding of mortgage insurance is you get a $500,000 mortgage and you insure it at the bank for $500,000. You pay that set amount. In 20 years, you've paid off your mortgage. But if something were to happen and you needed to claim that, it's only the outstanding amount of the mortgage that's paid out. Versus for the same amount of money, maybe you can speak to that a bit, because I think that's something people, sign it at the bank. There's really no discussion about it. I know, years ago I used to pay a lot of attention and then it kind of faded away, but the principles are still there.
Yes, something's always better than nothing. So people often come and say, "Oh, I signed up. My neighbor told me it was not good to do that." We'll say at least you're covered. So now you've got something.
Yeah.
But the couple of things with mortgage life insurance, and this is I'm saying generally for most financial institutions, you sign a piece of paper that says, 2 check marks. I've never had a heart attack, and I don't smoke. And that's really all the questions that they ask you. And then when you go to claim, the deceased person is then underwritten. So a very complex issue that not a lot of people know about is like, when you buy insurance from a broker, you are getting all those insurance questions out of the way first. I broke my arm when I was 17. Well, what were you doing? Well, I jumped off a building because I'm in parkour. It's like, okay, is this guy risky? And so how much do you drink? Have you ever taken drugs? You had a health, you went to the hospital one time. What for? Oh, headaches. Oh, has your doctor, so all that's vetted up front. And then it's like, here's your offer. And you could choose to buy it or not. Because sometimes you might get a quote, but you might get what's called a rating. And your premium isn't $2,000 a year.
Right.
It's $2,900.
Right.
Because we believe you're a little higher risk. So that's when you buy something through us and we shop it. With mortgage life insurance, you mentioned 2 things, Tamara, which is as you get older, the rate you pay per thousand goes up. And most people renew their mortgage every 5 years. So yes, you're bang on that as you pay down your mortgage, that's the death benefit. Okay, so if you got a $500,000 mortgage, then it's going to be $400. It's going down. As you get older, your rate's going up. So your death benefit's going down, your rate's going up, and then you got to worry about underwriting at the back end.
Right.
When your husband or wife just passed away and you're dealing with that, and now you got to deal with I got to get all his medical records to you, bank?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that hereditary industry has evolved a bit, but those are some of the common landmines that we say, hey, you could buy a policy, a 10-year term or a 20-year term where it's just, what the premium is, the death benefit's fixed, and then that there's no hassle. It's already been done. So yeah, we deal with that a lot.
And it's a great question, actually, because so many times they make it almost like they slip it under the cracks. When we did our mortgage, she was like, "Oh yeah, no, your life insurance, like you want your mortgage insured," and I'm like, "No, we're good. We don't need that." But they kind of just assume it's almost like it's on there unless you say no.
I might screw this up, but I think it's almost against the law to force someone.
Yes.
A lawyer would have to comment. I think it's against the law to force someone to take it, to give them the mortgage.
Yeah.
So you're bang on. Like my wife is a paralegal. She does conveyancing and processing, and she's like, "Oh, there's another one. There's another one."
Oh, yeah.
And it's really out of probably just ease. People just say, "Oh yeah, I should
do that." Yeah.
I should do that. And on that, we should talk. There is a box that you can check for disability insurance, which it says, "Do you want us to make your payments if you're disabled?" But then they'd only make the payments for 24 months. So then what happens after 24 months? And you could say, well, by then I could figure out what I want to do with the house. Maybe we sell it. But then when you look at the rates, a person should really, without spilling the Kool-Aid, compare buying a $3,000 a month benefit, disability, off the open market versus a $3,000 mortgage payment for 24 months.
Right.
Because to qualify for the payment, to have the mortgage, you got to be pretty disabled. So
Right.
one would argue if you're that disabled, you probably will be off for more than 2 years.
Yes, good point.
So just some kind of tips to kind of
Well, and
think
it's
about.
just little thing to watch out for, really.
Yeah.
It's to be aware of.
So another question that we've talked about before, this is going back quite a while ago
I
that we
always get
talked.
nervous when I see that face. Like
I
you
know.
got a smile that's gonna like. It's like I put my bulletproof.
As I
vest on
lean
this.
forward, I'm like,
I'm like,
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
this is
Interesting.
juicy. No, I'm just kidding.
What is she going to say?
Cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
So you tell us about it. What is your thoughts on it?
So again, I wouldn't say that I am a guru. I wouldn't say that I am not licensed. This is not a buy or sell
No,
recommendation.
but this is just a conversation because you and I've talked about it. And I
we'll
find
do
it
it for
so-
entertainment purpose.
Entertainment purposes, full disclosure. Okay.
So yeah, 2020 got involved just basically with a guru, reading it, all this stuff, trading it. Well, I will say it's luck that the market sort of rallied out of 2020 and then it kind of dipped in 21 and then it went up. Now, currently today, we're in not a very nice place. So big, fall off. And really, I think what's being proven is that cryptocurrency, as much as it's touted as sort of like this thing that's separate from the other capitalistic world, like it's the independent person's
Yes.
thing,
Yeah.
like Bitcoin could take over the, US dollar, which I don't think is, a reality. But at the same time, there is uses for some of these projects.
Yeah.
A lot of the projects, it's just an idea. So that's one thing that you go into it going, is there a use? I basically took amount of money that when it goes up or down, I get really excited or I get really pissed off. But if the money went to zero, it doesn't impact my silos.
Yeah.
Right. Smart.
So that's my high risk bucket when you look at, like I have my
Yeah.
own spreadsheet and that's the high risk. So that I think is what people miscalculate. Like they go into stuff with $2,000 and you think, well, if that doubles, that's 4,000. That isn't really going to change your program. So
Yeah.
either get it, because it is quite distracting.
Yes.
Because it does move. The cycles are a lot more compressed than the stock market. So the stock market, we all know, goes up and down and floats around. Well, the crypto stuff is, weeks and months instead of years and decades.
Right.
So if you can get on the right side of it, more times than not, because you'll get on the wrong side of it,
Yeah.
then you can come out ahead. And again, we did a couple podcasts on it where I had someone who's very deep in the space speak on it, and he talks about he talked lately about the income generation that can be created from these crypto tokens or there's kind of currency and then there's crypto assets, but you can lend money to different projects and they will give you a rate of return. And so, lots of times I'll have friends say, well, like, how do you even understand it? The whole point is you don't need to. It really is you are speculating on a movement of, there isn't, like when you look at a stock like RBC Bank,
Yeah.
I could show you in 2 seconds their profit, the history of their profit. You
Yes.
understand the business, what it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
CN Rail, they move stuff across the country. If you can buy that stock right and collect the dividends, then it's pretty good investment. Crypto, it's such a black box currently. I think it's going to get better, but I'd invest very
Is it like
Cautiously.
kind of going to Vegas and playing the slots?
yeah, I would say, well, yeah, I don't know if I'd say the slots, but I would say that
It's
if
like a
you're,
blackjack table.
yeah, I would look at it like that. Because if
Don't
you
they
take
say
that
the
approach,
house always wins?
yeah,
That's true. So buy the house. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
No. Okay.
See? Always back to real estate.
well, I learned something from a client the other day who was buying these little mining machines for Bitcoin. Again, I always learn so much from clients, but they're I think $1,500 or $1,800. It's basically like a computer, and you set it up. And so he's telling me about it, and they got one in someone's house and one in someone else's house, and then they create this little thing, and all the crypto guys are going like, "Oh, he's botching that so bad." But the principle was he made $3 in a day in income. And so as they get better, I don't know how it works. So I think, well, if you're going to put your money into something that generates money back, that's a very fast loop. You can
Right,
buy
I
something,
see.
get money, and then you can make it better and get more money. And so that's,
But the risk is high. Like, I see what you mean. Whereas if you buy a house, you're going to get money back right away. It might take you holding on a little bit, and you might, so it's going to be more of a
Yeah.
time thing, just same as the stock market.
well, the house is a great example because it's tangible. I think that's why real estate's been so good to people is they, for one, leverage. If people got $400,000 mortgages and bought $600,000 worth of RBC stock at the right time, they'd be multimillionaire. But people don't think of stocks
No.
the
Right.
same as real estate because, for one, they're not leveraging like they leverage real estate.
Yeah.
Right.
The difference that I love about real estate is you get to use the asset, and if it's a rental, that's different, but you get to use a nicer house while it's appreciating.
For sure. Yeah.
With a stock, it literally is, you don't get to use much of RBC once you buy some shares.
Yeah.
I guess you could be a client, but it's not the same as, we're sitting in a beautiful home and it's
And
something.
you don't see it. Like, it's not tangible. It's interesting because we're seeing a lot more people coming back to the market as the market's shifting right now. But what we're seeing is a lot of investors are coming back to the market or just still jumping into the market because they're saying, I don't want to necessarily have some of my money in the stock market. I want to see something. I want to feel it, see it, touch it. And so we're seeing a bit more of that. I mean, rental market is also still so crazy here, but
Yeah, you guys are in a bit of again, that's for your podcast. I'll listen because I'll get all the tips on there.
Well, we had one house. I don't know if you heard about it. It was on the news last year. It garnered a lot of attention, but the seller was a big believer in Bitcoin. And we put a topper,
remember this.
a topper on, a real estate topper on the for sale sign saying, buy it for Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And the seller really wanted to accept Bitcoin and was gung ho and actually took some time to convince us that we wanted to embark upon this. And we sort of thought, well, it's different. And I don't know. And it seems, is it even above board? Is it even legitimate? And it certainly got a lot of attention, got a ton of phone calls. We got a lot of offers on it, none of which were for Bitcoin.
Yeah.
no.
But it got people talking anyway.
So I think that if I remember that story right, if you've already talked about the podcast, stop me. But
No, we haven't.
the banks won't take Bitcoin as a form of down payment.
No.
But that was a problem,
Yeah.
Yep.
right?
A lawyer, the real estate companies need to be paid, their commission in money, not
Right.
in Bitcoin. And property transfer tax. So the government's not going to accept Bitcoin for the property transfer
Right.
tax. The banks won't accept Bitcoin to pay, the
mortgage
pay
out.
off the mortgage or what have you. So it's a neat idea, and will we see it at some point? Maybe. Had a buyer come along and offered, what was it, 8 Bitcoin? 80? I can't remember.
Yeah.
What it would have been.
Yeah, if it would have been like 60 grand at the time because it's gone down quite a bit now.
Right. So yeah, it was about 60. And so however many it was, the house was 900,000. But it certainly, he was game, and when we broke it down, I said, okay, well, do you have a mortgage on the house? Well, yeah, there was a mortgage. So I said, okay, well, then part of the money will have to be
Right.
cash, or he could have taken Bitcoin and then converted it to cash straight away and
It
paid
just
off
shows
that.
that there's use. Like in Bitcoin, there's a use. There's an exchange that can happen, and there's more and more people seeing that as value.
Well, and I think people are curious about it.
Yep.
When you and I sat down that one time and you were really kind of excited and you're like, this is just something kind of that you were doing for fun in a sense, or just wanting to understand it really. I mean, that's the world that you're in, just to learn more about it. And I think people are curious about it. I think people are going, okay, well, what is this really? And is it really something? And you talk to like our parents, and our parents are like, what? No, that's ridiculous. That's gone away. But I mean, they thought the internet was just for...
Just for dirty stuff.
Dirty stuff in the 90s, right? Tamara got a website in the 90s. My parents were like, what? You're not getting a website? What are you going to put on there? Tamara's like, houses. They're like, really? So
Well,
it's,
I think that like you think of like video, like you guys use video a ton in real estate.
yeah.
Back in the 90s, there would have been an app where someone was doing video and they say, hey, we put video on websites. And people say, well, no, like we barely even have websites. Like who'd ever want a video on a website?
Yeah.
I think that's the stage we're at with crypto is we don't even know yet what we're going to use this stuff for.
Yeah.
But the world seems to is gone more tech every year, every decade. We've gone more technology. We haven't gotten less.
True.
So that seems like a high probability that there's interest there and there's more people adopt it. But
well, to have a world currency, because that's essentially what it will be, right?
yeah,
Like it's a world currency, which does make sense as the world becomes more and more global down the road. Like it,
Oof, do you think so? I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know either. I
True.
don't.
Okay.
Another
in the current-
podcast,
In the
Chad.
current world, I'm like, maybe not.
Well, I think in theory, it has a lot of efficiency. I just think there's a lot of banking stuff behind the scenes that we don't know about. Not corrupt things, but just the way that countries exchange money and
Yes.
the way we see the market move and how we are connected. It used to be that, if you bought stocks in Europe when they were down and Canada was up, it shifts and then you're up in Europe and Canada goes down. But now we're very connected. And one of the points I was going to make and forgot was crypto, I think, is a lot more connected to the NASDAQ or the tech stock sector.
Of course, yes.
So the Teslas, the Amazon, Amazon's getting big enough, but like Shopify, really tech-based, Zoom, Roku, Square Reader, that market, when the market tanks, goes down the most, but in 2020 it went up the most.
Yes.
And so now it's, we might be a little more connected. So crypto might not be a separate asset class to reduce risk. It might be actually what's, correlated in the same risk.
Right.
So one needs to be kind of careful of that. One question I have about spouses and buying houses, because lately I've been quite interested in the behavioral finances of spouses making financial decisions.
Yeah.
And so is there any, have you come across any families where one spouse is looking at something and and the other spouse is not at all interested, and then they come together to buy it?
Yeah, I mean, Shannon can speak to this with personal experience, but it's funny because something we like to do to people is say, okay, sit down at your onboarding meeting. When we sit down and go, okay, describe your perfect home to me. If you guys can each take a piece of paper and write down your wish list. And then they give us their wish list. And I look at them and go, well, we've got good news and bad news. They're like, okay, well, what is it? I'm like, the good news is I get to sell you 2 houses. Bad news is you won't be living together because they're so different. What you want is so different. Everybody does. They do vary.
They do. They definitely vary. But I do find that people tend to come together, but it's a process. And quite often it is that the husband and the wife want 2 different things. He's really all about the toys that he wants, and he wants to have a really big garage space, and he needs to be able to have his RV on site and not have it somewhere else because he wants to be able to see it and know that it's safe or whatever. And she wants a really big kitchen, and she wants a really nice ensuite. And so it's merging those things. But as you tend to look at more and more properties together, they solidify and come a little bit more together. I think they both sort of make concessions on each side, and
compromise
and understand, okay, I have to compromise a little bit. Maybe I can't have my RV there, but I still have room for some of my toys, maybe not all of them. And she goes, okay, I might not have the biggest kitchen, but I have a nice kitchen. And, but really we become counselors. Same probably for a little bit in your industry too. And you kind of counsel them together so that, and I think that at the end of the day, most buyers look as well and go, okay, am I making a smart decision financially as well? Yes, it has to meet both of our needs, but will this make sense for us financially down the road? And I think that's where we start to see people making, concessions on what they're looking for. Because if it makes sense long-term in that regard, I think they're happier to make changes.
So
now, when it comes to an investment property, a rental condo or the fourplex or commercial space, often it's one spouse sort of dictating, and sometimes the other spouse has no interest, doesn't go to see it, doesn't really care, doesn't get involved. So,
and even to some points, we have clients that say, this is my decision, my purchase, don't even include him on the emails. Like, it's my money, I'm doing it. And you're like, okay. But they're a great couple together. And you're like, okay, they're great. And they purchase houses and stuff for their own personal use, but they do their own investing.
Yeah.
So you do see that a little bit too. And
what about, because you guys work on both sides, sellers, where it's breaking down, and that where, maybe a bit more communication could have helped? Or is there no stories like that where sellers are selling frustrated, separating, whatever, or an investment that wasn't good, and they're trying to fire sale it, and they're maybe not separating, but they're getting out of it? And what did you notice anything that that people could learn from?
Yeah, stay married. I mean, we've seen a few of them where they, because I think often a separating couple, one of them would like to keep the house, if possible. And so we've had some where we've listed the house but one party really doesn't want to sell. If the value gets low enough, then they'll be able to afford to buy the other partner out. So they have the house show terribly. Like keep it in a total state of disarray.
Right.
And, bring in 11 cats and 7 litter boxes and start having chickens in the backyard and just deplete the value.
Right.
So that they can buy out the other one when the price gets low enough.
Right.
So
It can be tricky. I mean, the biggest thing with any of it is just communication. And I think making sure that, you communicate with both parties equally, I think is really important, and trying to encourage them to come onto the same page. You do have clients that are like that once in a while. And, what do you do in that situation? You just do your best. And that's all you can do. But I think the biggest thing is just having that great communication and explaining where the market
is. In a shifting market. Now
the shifting market's tough.
Prices, everyone's got their number here. So high.
Yeah.
They have to buy 2 houses.
Yeah.
So hard.
So then they put their offers in on these ones, and then subjects are kind of light because you want to get it.
Yeah.
And then
the
market
other one's not
shifts.
selling.
Oh, there's lots of that.
You see lots of that. And so tough because the market dictates, right? And of course, in a market that shifts and changes, that's where you start to see that frustration.
Yeah.
In the market, when it's going up, it's fine. And everybody's happy because they're making good money. So it's like, okay, well, I found another place. But
well, we had a phone call this morning, and this family called in. They've got 2 condos that are closing, new construction. They purchased them in 2019. They get to pay for them the end of next month, and they can't afford to pay for them. So they can buy one, they think, but they need, ideally they'd like both to be sold.
Right.
And so we're
2019 prices or revised?
2019 prices.
Okay.
So we got into the fine print. They really hadn't. They did email the contracts for what they've purchased, and I did the same thing. Okay, bought in 2019, you should be good.
Yeah.
If they wish to do an assignment, the developer has to agree to it and charges a fee of 3.5%. Which is more than real estate commissions.
Whoa.
So, and they might not agree because the developer is still, there are still other units that are for sale.
Right.
So you look at this, the developer has to agree. The developer has a say in the pricing. The developer gets 3.5%. So, we're waiting to hear from the developer if they will allow it. And then here's another tricky thing. So if these people somehow can get the money to go ahead and close on both these properties, they're going to pay GST. You pay 5% GST.
Yeah.
Then they'll turn around and list them, and we could sell them the next day. If it can't be assigned, they close, they sell them the next day. It's
Pay real
still
estate commission.
used residential housing. The government will collect GST again.
now it's on the
Wow.
lift. It's on that
okay,
lift
the
price,
difference.
the difference, but they still have to pay GST. So that new buyer has to pay GST on whatever that lift is.
Just learned something. Thanks.
Yeah. So there's all different costs that are associated with it. And we'll see a little bit more of that, I think, as some of these buildings starting to come. I mean, lots of them aren't going to be ready for, a couple
while.
years still too.
Well, what did I
but-
just read? There are 25 high rises, either proposed, before council right now to get rezoned, under construction, or built, and they're selling them right now. So 25, and that's just downtown Kelowna.
Yeah, it's
So
crazy.
Well, you guys work
But-
with lots of out-of-town buyers, and it's
We do.
Tons.
But when you hear, like we just had from the Economic Development Commissioner, she came and spoke. And when you talk to her, Krista, she's so positive what Kelowna is offering, what the Central Okanagan has. You kind of think, okay, yeah, it makes sense that we've got all these condos. Because part of you sometimes looks back and goes, what are these developers thinking, bringing all of these units to market? They do extensive research, or you'd hope so. Yeah. But when you talk to them, when you talk to her, you realize, Central Okanagan is doing a lot to promote Kelowna, and there's a lot happening here that we don't even know. Aerospace was an industry I didn't even know we had here. It's a big industry here. Like the Kelowna makes up for 18%, I think it was, of the BC's business of that industry here.
Wow.
And that's an industry we didn't even know. Then you add the high tech, and you add, which we have a lot of big companies that are here and bringing in jobs, not to mention the airport and the hospital. And so I think there's room
The
for
people are coming. We will see some, you always do. And even in the boom, the heydays, there were some people who absolutely needed to sell yesterday. And we may see a little bit more of that, but
And the tricky part is if a property, going back to your conversation before, if a property is selling and you've got a conflict between two sellers, maybe, one seller wants to sell, one doesn't, or what have you, or they're stuck with this house and they've both bought other properties, like what do they do in that situation? It's hard because if word gets out that that's the property, people will sit back and watch it. Right now, buyers are
absolutely.
sitting back already and kind of watching places. They're going, okay, well, interest rates are going up and, inflation's going up. So maybe I'll just sit back and watch the market. They're already doing that in general. Then you add on that, okay, is there something with the property? Can we get it at a better deal? So whatever you can do, I think, as a listing agent to create a pending event, like you got to act now and here's why.
Right.
That's what a property needs, is a pending event. That's what we all need to sell something. When the market was going up like crazy, we didn't have to create pending events because the event was the market was going up so fast.
Well,
So-
and,
Yeah.
and you're actually just reminding me, and it's interesting, something we haven't talked about before, but if a couple is separating, if only one of them is living in the house, and first thing we say is we don't want anyone to know that you're not living together anymore. So go get another toothbrush, put some books on the other night table, get some men's clothes back in that closet, and you are a cohesive, happy family. And,
Yeah.
and they're like, I can't stand him. I'm like, you can stand him right now, because for selling the house, you
It's
guys
have to.
thousands of dollars.
Absolutely, it's true.
It's really, really true. So that's just a little tip for those who are needing to sell, and if there are two people on title, have two people's things in
Absolutely.
the closets. Yeah.
Even if it's not two people on title. We've even had it where it's been a bachelor selling his place. And I'm like, you need to get, some clothes. Like, well, I got my sister. I'm like, perfect. Go to her house, steal some of her clothes, put them in the closet, just so it looks like a happy family. And it's,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's where people want to buy
Yeah.
properties from. Like, it's that emotion, right? And everyone's tied to emotion. And especially nowadays, even more so, I think. So,
Well, thanks for that.
yeah.
Those are good tips, but let's go back to
let's
wealth management.
I know. I'm like,
Well,
we could get
It's
sidetracked.
behavior, though, and it's important to finances, and it drives a lot of decision making with finance, because whether it's real estate or stocks, or should we do RSPs? You talked about some spouses keep their bank accounts together,
Yep.
some do it separate.
Yes.
I have a lot of professional families where they do it separate, and then maybe one spouse owns the house and the other one literally pays rent. And we're talking about people that make $300,000-400,000 a year each, and yet there's a
Wow.
check happening every month, and has for years and years, because the common bills account, they've got it figured out that at the end of the month it's down to like $200 or $300. They replenish it, and then they get their groceries, get their bills of the house, is all thing. But then
Wow.
the spending is their own. So there's no like, hey, I want to get a Harley, or I want to
Right.
go on a trip with my girlfriends.
Yeah.
Those just happen, and no one balks because the central, thing is taken care of. Now,
That's interesting. I
It
think that
is.
makes sense,
With-
It does.
actually.
what I say to people is usually joint checking is more efficient, just for accounting reasons and different things. But once you introduce kids to the mix, there's more elements. You've got usually, most of the time, woman taking mat leave.
Yeah.
And so they're off, so they're not generating income. So then, there's a great podcast. Oh, and I can't remember, but I know the podcast name. It's called Fitness, Fatherhood, and Finances.
Oh, love it.
And one of his episodes, he talks about unpacking how much people should be allowed to spend. So the example is, we've got working, so let's say man and working woman, then they have a child, woman's off for a year, and he gets a bonus. So is he allowed to spend the whole bonus on his own stuff? Or does he have to put all the bonus into the joint checking, and it gets just sort of watered down to everyone? So that he has a formula, and I won't ruin the formula, but he unpacks how it can be cohesive for everybody. And that even though that, she was on mat leave, she got a piece of the action, and then she could feel like, I'm here at home, you're, working hard, you generate this bonus, so that there's cohesion in the decision making.
Right.
And I would say 7 out of my top 10 clients are all still married to their original spouse from 25, 30 plus years ago. So either that's who Serviss Wealth tends to attract, or there's something to be said about I looked at those 7 people, what are the traits? Every single one of them comes to the meeting. So it isn't one spouse
Yes.
only at the meeting. Both of them
Interesting.
come, even though one might be more interested in the other. They sit there, they sit through it. I try and engage them a bit more, and so they're part of the plan. And then they communicate more. Even a simple coffee in the morning, and it's like, hey, I'm kind of looking at this listing, and it's more of a start the process small. Like, hey, I'm looking at this Harley, and,
Yes.
and oh yeah, there's that face. Not going to happen today. So
Yeah.
with real estate, it's the same. And with investing, you've got this small conversations, more frequent, opposed to, hey, I got us a meeting with Shannon and Tamara. We're going to go look at this rental house. Meanwhile, say the guy or me would be looking at realtor.ca for the last 2 months.
Yeah.
I've already got my head really like, I'm going to buy this thing. And then wham, I'm going to lay it on my wife and say,
Right. This
we're
is what we're
going to
doing.
go meet the realtors. They go, whoa, like
Yeah.
I was already envisioning getting a pool.
I'm trying to remember what the stats are. I think they say the average person is looking on realtor.ca for 8 months before they tell their spouse they're thinking of moving.
I think it is
believe
8
I
months.
think it
Yes.
is 8 months.
Yeah.
So
What's the stat on Castanet classifieds, like quads,
Yeah.
dirt
Yeah,
bikes?
I know. Hey, what's that?
It's like
Facebook
men,
Marketplace,
like-
shoes.
Yeah, yeah.
Totally. It
Yeah.
always goes back to shoes, doesn't it?
Always. It's all about the shoes. Always.
So
know.
before we sign off, Dustin, a couple of things. What is your number one advice you have to someone in the financial, if you had one advice that you could say, okay, this is what I would do. What is it?
So an A and a B part. So there's two. So the dashboard.
No, you can only have one.
Okay,
No, I'm just
dashboard.
kidding. No, I'm
There
kidding.
you go. Because on the
two.
dashboard, it has the goals. So
Yeah.
write down all of your stuff on one piece of paper. It doesn't have to be a fancy picture. It could just be a notepad. Write down all your investment accounts. Write down all your insurance and figure out how much you spend every month. If you did that, you'd probably be ahead of like 65% of
Wow.
everybody. Because most people just go, this is how much came in. I spend this much.
Mm-hmm.
You don't run your business that way, usually.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't last for very long. So then in your personal world, that's the same thing. So the dashboard, and then you do it with the sheet, with what kind of houses do you want?
Yeah.
We call it lifestyle design, but there's a checkbox thing, and I give it to both spouses on either side of the boardroom table and say, hey, check off, what kind of goals you have for the next year. And then you bring them and it's like, whoa, okay.
Yes.
But there might be one or two that are the same. And regardless if that's not your number one, that should be the one that you both focus on.
Mm-hmm.
So again, that that exercise alone of the numbers and then where do you want to go is very paramount because you get an idea. I share a personal story. My wife's father is a home builder developer. So I asked her about 4 or 5 years ago, hey, like, how do you see us retiring? And personally, my vision is I will do some sort of business and make some bit of income as long as I am able-bodied.
Right.
So, but I also see how the stock market has worked for lots of people, and we use it in our life. And her answer to me was, well, we'll just keep flipping houses, and then pretty soon we'll have our mortgage paid off, and then pretty soon we'll just be building up a savings.
Interesting.
Because her father, not very stock market ever focused.
Right.
And he's done extremely well with real estate. So that for me was like, wow, that's quite different than I envisioned.
Mm-hmm.
I like real estate, but I like real estate like 25%. I like real estate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not all.
No.
Yeah.
No. And I would agree with that.
And so like that, here's the, a craftsman in the trade living it in my real life. And so now Jody's a lot more involved in seeing the silos and knowing that we've overweighted how much extra savings we have to real estate. So if we should have been putting X amount, we do a little bit extra into that bucket that we buy into real estate projects.
Right.
Yes.
Because again, that is a common goal we have.
Yes.
That isn't my ultimate goal, but it's a common goal we have. So together, stay together,
Yes.
Yeah.
make decisions together. Hopefully there's some longevity there. So we'll see in 30 years when I listen to this. And
That's great advice. I love it.
I do too. I think that's awesome. Okay, so quickly before we finish up, what are you reading right now? What is on your bedside table?
I just got, what's it called? David Goggins.
Oh, you did. It's so good.
Can't
I can't remember the name. David Goggin is, I can't remember.
break me or
Yeah, something can't, no, it's not beat me. I think it's break, right?
something.
Anyway.
He's a Navy SEAL. He's been in military, Navy SEAL, Marine, like hardcore
Army, everything.
fighting. He's been into fights and stuff, but he's very driven, and it's a business book. So that's the one. And then I've written my own book, so that will be coming out to be determined in the next few months. So right now the cover's
Right.
getting designed, and I'll keep you posted.
Awesome.
Hey, that's great.
exciting.
Yeah.
And then where can people find you? And
So-
soon be able to find your book.
Yeah. So servisswealth.com is my website, and then the Picture of Wealth is the podcast.
Okay,
Love
awesome.
it. And we'll
you.
have all the links as well down below to be able to click and find your podcast and find
This
you.
is really fun. Thanks, guys. This is like a lot of years of.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Well, it was thanks to you that we started doing our podcast. So
I know.
thank you.
Well, thank you, producer in the back.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us today. We will see you next time.